Welcome to the Teaching Autism and Special Education Community Podcast. Hi, I'm Nikki, a passionate special educator, autism advocate, resource creator with over a decade of experience, and you may know me as the face behind Teaching Autism. This podcast is your go-to place for practical tips, hands-on strategies, and inspiring and funny stories to support special educators all around the world, whether it's building independence, creating engaging lessons, or finding that elusive work-life balance. I'm here to help you thrive inside and outside of the classroom. Let's dive into today's episode and make a difference together. Hi friends, and welcome back to the Teaching Autism and Special Education podcast. I'm Nikki, your host, and you may also know me as the face behind Teaching Autism. Now, today we are diving into trauma triggers in the classroom. Now, before we go any further, let me gently say this. Not every behavior is trauma. Not every autistic trait is trauma. We need to be careful not to over-pathologize. But for some students, certain environments, tones, words, or situations can activate stored stress responses. And when that happens, behavior makes a lot more sense. So, in this episode today, we are going to be unpacking what trauma triggers actually are, what they can look like in school, and how to respond in a way that builds safety instead of escalating things further. All right, so let's start right at the beginning. What is a trauma trigger? A trauma trigger is something that reminds the nervous system of a past threat. It does not have to be dramatic. It could be a tone of voice, a raised volume. It could be a specific phrase. It could be something like a door slamming shut. It could be being corrected in public. It could be being told, hurry up, or being physically blocked. It could even be being touched unexpectedly. Now, the key thing to understand is this. The brain does not always distinguish between past and present when it comes to threat. If something feels similar enough, the nervous system is going to react as if the danger is happening now, and that reaction is automatic. Now, when that trigger hits, stress hormones are going to increase. The heart rate is going to rise. Logical thinking is going to drop. Your student has now moved into fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And some of the ways that can look. So fight is pretty much self-explanatory. Shouting, arguing, hitting, swearing. Flight is running away, hiding, leaving the room. Freeze is staring, shutting down, going silent. And fawn is one not often spoken about. This is apologizing excessively, people-pleasing, and over-complying. The behavior might look disproportionate, but from inside their body, it feels urgent. Now, this next part is really important because we're going to hit on some trauma triggers and autism. Autistic students may experience trauma differently for a few reasons. They may have heightened sensory sensitivity. They may have difficulty predicting social outcomes. They may have repeated experiences of correction or exclusion, and they can have higher rates of bullying. Even an everyday school experience can feel very intense if a student's nervous system is already on high alert. So sometimes what we see is layered. So autism, sensory overload, plus a trauma response. And all that layering there is going to amplify the reactions. So in school, things that you may notice for this are a student who reacts strongly to raised voices, a student who shuts down when corrected in front of peers, a student who panics during transitions, perhaps a student who becomes aggressive when physically blocked from leaving, and a student who melts down when they're told they're wrong. Now, on the surface, all of that looks like defiance, but underneath, it might be a perceived threat. Now, when a trauma trigger activates, Logic does not work. So I don't want you to do long explanations or lectures or public correction or get involved in power struggles, because all of those are actually most likely going to increase the threat. And if their nervous system is already in survival mode, it cannot access any form of reasoning in that moment. Now, that doesn't mean that there are no boundaries. It just means that timing matters. So some things I want you to try instead. First of all, I want you to lower your tone and your volume. I want you to calm down your nervous system, because calm nervous systems co-regulate others' nervous systems. I want you to reduce proximity if it's needed. Some students just need space to feel safe. I want you to use simple language. You're safe. I'm here. Let's take a breath. I want you to delay any teaching conversations. Skill building happens after regulation, not during escalation. I want you to look for patterns. Is it always noise? Is it always public correction? Is it always transitions? Because patterns will tell you the trigger. And now I want you to increase the predictability. Think visual schedules, clear expectations, gentle warnings before change, because predictability is going to reduce any perceived threats. Now, supporting trauma responses does not mean that we are going to excuse unsafe behavior. If harm happens, it's like I always say, repair still happens. But we approach that repair after the nervous system has settled. We teach the skills when their thinking is online again, not when survival mode is driving the bus. So you may be a teacher, you may be a family member, a caregiver, a therapist, and you may have in the past maybe had a situation where you felt confused by a reaction that just seemed too big. And if so, you, my friends, are not alone, because it's really hard when you don't know the full story. But one thing that I say is to start asking yourself, what might this remind them of? So don't think about, what is wrong with them? Why are they behaving that way? I want you to think of, what might this remind them of? Because what happens is naturally you will become a lot softer. And when we get softer, we actually reduce that escalation. So you don't have to be a therapist to be trauma aware. You just need to be able to be curious and calm and supportive. All right, friends, hopefully that was another quick and information-packed full episode for you all. I hope you were able to take away some key information from that today. If there's one thing I would like you to take away, it is what is behavior after trauma triggers? And it is the nervous system responding to a perceived threat, not because that child wants to be difficult, but because their body is trying to stay safe. So the next time that a behavior seems bigger than the moment, I just want you to ask, is this about now or is it about then? All right, friends, thanks for tuning in, and I'll speak to you again soon.